Saudi Arabia is trying to take over the game. I mean, let's be honest with each other. These dudes seemingly popped up out of nowhere as far as professional boxing, being on the professional boxing circuit is concerned. And just out of nowhere, in a flash, man, these dudes are just over here doing everything the fans want, at least from the perspective of the heavyweight division. I mean, putting on the biggest fights, putting them on right away, wasting no time at all. These dudes are just throwing the heavyweight division right on their back and running with it, right? Absolutely great stuff, right? Now, I've heard some people be critical saying the only reason they're able to do this is because they're losing money, they're paying too much money, all of these things. They're just trying to establish themselves in the industry. They're not really trying to make a profit off of these events. And then once they establish themselves in the industry, then they'll start to do maybe be a little bit more business savvy and how much money they're putting out for events. I mean, think about all the professional fighters that they brought into some of these events in the past, right? I mean, the price tag on some of this stuff has to just be through the roof. Now, I don't know any of that. I'm not privy to all those numbers. All I know for sure is that these fights that they're putting on are awesome, man. I mean, think about this, for example. Think about Francis Ngannou. This dude went from being the heavyweight champion of the UFC to a free agent to fighting Tyson Fury in one of the biggest boxing matches of the year. And that all seemed to come together so quickly, man. It all seemed to happen so fast. And we've got Saudi Arabia to thank for that, right? When they come in and they've got all that major money and they're willing to just pull the trigger right away, man, things can fall into place and things can happen quickly. So as far as being fans are concerned, it's absolutely huge. And these dudes are quick on top of it. I mean, they already had the contract signed for Wilder versus Joshua. Deontay Wilder was supposed to come out there. He was supposed to get the win. He was supposed to be fighting Anthony Joshua. Deontay Wilder fumbled the bag. Deontay Wilder didn't get the win. Deontay Wilder, for whatever reason, Father Time caught up to him. He wasn't prepared. He just didn't know exactly what Joseph Parker was bringing to the table. Whatever the case may be, man, Deontay Wilder loses the fight. Saudi Arabia doesn't bat an eye. They don't blink. They say, we want big fights over here. We're still going to make big fights. Francis Ngannou, you're up. Man, treat a dude like a high school coach. Wilder, you're out. Ngannou, you're up. Now all of a sudden we're getting Anthony Joshua versus Francis Ngannou, man, which, to be honest, I think is going to be an awesome fight. Now, we just had the press conference, and you got Ngannou at the press conference, and he's mentioning the fact that, I've heard stories. I've heard rumors that AJ doesn't have a chin. I've heard rumors that he's a little bit chinny, and if I connect, and I connect all the time, then this dude's going to go down. No way the fight goes to distance. It's going to end early if this dude doesn't have a chin, which is what the stories I hear. And that's such an interesting thing, man. It's such an interesting turn of events to see this dude go from the UFC and the heights that he achieved over there to come over to boxing. And if we're being honest with each other, he was written off. I mean, he got that fight with Fury. It was considered a gimmick fight in a lot of ways. It was a money fight. It was a cash out fight. I'll be honest. When I made the preview for the fight, I didn't think Ngannou was really going to be able to make it happen. For the simple fact that I didn't even think he was going to be able to get in the correct position. We know about the power he's got. That's obvious. You don't even have to see the power to know about it. You can hear people talk about it. You can just hear the impact that his punches make and understand the type of force that this dude's coming with. We all know about the power. But there's a difference between the distance and the positioning and things like that in MMA than in boxing. And there's a huge difference in the defensive boxing movements of a professional boxer at the highest level versus the defensive boxing movements of an MMA fighter. It's just because it's a different sport, right? They do things differently. So all that being considered, going into that fight with Fury, I'm like, no way, man, it's not going to happen. Ngannou came out there, blew us all away. Surprised every single person watching the fight. There was nobody who thought that he was going to come out there and look the way that he did. But he did, man. He did everything well. He held his spot well. He used the jab early on to get into range. He was working variety in his punches as far as going upstairs and going downstairs. He had a really good check left hook that culminated in that knockdown in the third round. He applied steady pressure. I mean, there was a lot of good things that he did well. He was on balance very well so that he was able to react accordingly. There was a lot of good things that he did well that I didn't think he was going to be able to do. Right? When we break that fight down and we look at it, we think, wow, he prepared really well. His team had him prepared. The moment wasn't too big for him. He didn't get overwhelmed. It didn't matter what Tyson Fury was doing. He did his best to stay on point and stick with the game plan. But now we got to be a little bit more critical. Now we got to examine that film just a touch bit more, right? Because now we're talking about him, not just what he did in that fight versus what we expected him to do in that fight. Now we're talking about taking that film, building off of it, and thinking, how's that going to apply in his next fight when he goes in there with Anthony Joshua? And if we're being honest with each other, he kind of fell apart a little bit after about the 5th round. Right now, I don't want to be all drastic, right? Because if he would have fell apart too much, we'd be talking about how he got knocked out by Fury, and that's not the case at all. But if you look at those first rounds, through like the first 4 rounds, and then you look at 5 through 10, okay, you could tell that he was getting a little bit fatigued. And when he was getting fatigued, his feet were a little bit heavier. So he was following around a little bit more versus cutting off the ring. He wasn't quite in the position that he needed to be in all the time. His reflexes were just a tad bit slower, so the check left hook didn't land anymore. His punches were coming a little bit wider instead of being tight because he was a little bit more labored and a little bit more tired. He was getting caught with the jab throughout the whole fight, but I thought he started getting caught with it more frequently at that point. And again, it's because he didn't have the movements down enough, right? When he was when he was in that orthodox stance, right? And it's one of the things I was just going to touch on next. But when he was in that orthodox stance, he was getting caught with the jab. He wasn't parrying it. He wasn't using upper body movement. He wasn't able to get out of the way of it using his feet or anything because he was typically right in front of Fury. It's just one of those things that you notice, and it was throwing off his game because it's really, really, really hard to build your offense and build a rhythm and kind of get into a flow when a dude is smashing you in the face with his jab. It's not going to do the most damage. It's not going to end the fight. It's not going to knock you out or anything crazy like that, but it's going to be just enough to break up the rhythm of your offense. And before you know it, man, that 3-minute bell is ringing and you didn't get anything going because that dude was out there controlling everything, the pace, the distance, all the things that were happening when you were starting and stopping. He was controlling everything with the jab. And we didn't see Tyson Fury control everything with the jab, but we saw him use it very effectively against Ngannou, right? And that's something that we're going to have to watch with this fight against Joshua because Joshua's got a really good jab. Now, I touched on briefly about how his offense was out of the orthodox stance. When he was out of that orthodox stance is when he was getting that check left hook going. It's when he was using the jab a little bit. It's when he was mixing up his offensive flow and trying to go to the body a little bit more. But that's when he was also getting caught with the jab. That's also when Fury was lighting him up sometimes coming in behind that 1-2, right? Caught him with 2 real big ones. I want to say in like the 5th or the 6th round when he started to really try to turn the tide. We saw Ngannou switch to the southpaw stance. Right, we saw him hold that position for a lot of those later rounds. Now, the thing about the southpaw stance is he was nullifying Tyson Fury's jab. Okay, Ngannou was using his right hand, his lead hand. He was nullifying the jab of Tyson Fury, so he no longer had to be worried about getting hit in the face with Tyson Fury's jab. Now, the downside to that was he really didn't get any of his offense going. You know, you didn't see him really able to work that jab of his own effectively. You didn't see him really able to land that straight left hand effectively. You didn't see him use a check right hook effectively. I mean, he threw the punches. They were straight. They were crisp. They were sharp. They look quick because he's got good hands and he's athletic and everything. But he wasn't connecting. He wasn't able to build anything. He wasn't doing combination punching. When you saw him flip back to the orthodox stance, immediately you see him start to get his offense off. And immediately you see him start to get caught with that jab. It's just the nature of the beast. Now you got to think about it. How is that going to play out when he's fighting Anthony Joshua? I'll tell you something else that I liked about Ngannou, man. The dude didn't accept the clinch. He did not accept the clinch. You know, going into that fight with Fury, one of the talking points was that, hey, he wore down Deontay Wilder in their fights by he's being the bigger guy, leaning on him, leaning on his back, pulling on him, just dragging on him round after round after round, carrying, 280 pounds, 290 pounds, whatever it is Fury weighs when he steps in the ring. That's a lot. It's going to wear Ngannou down. He's not used to that type of clinching. He's used to doing things differently in MMA. You could see that he had a plan for that. He's like, great. Fury wants to come in. He wants to try and grapple with me a little bit in the boxing sense. He wants to try to pull on my arm or lock it up and lean on me. He wasn't accepting any of it. He was creating space and using an uppercut. Great stuff. He wasn't able to really land that uppercut from that position, but he also stopped what Fury was trying to do in the sense of laying on him. You got to think he'll be able to do that same thing against Anthony Joshua. If he doesn't want to, if Ngannou makes up his mind that he doesn't want to accept the clinch, he doesn't like being on the inside in the clinch, he doesn't want to hold there, he doesn't, whatever the case may be, he understands physically. He's very strong. He understands how to break that clinch. He understands how to create space. He understands how to throw hard punches off of it, which in turn is going to discourage Anthony Joshua from trying to even get to that spot in the first place. But let's be honest with each other here. We've now got some film on Ngannou. That's going to make Anthony Joshua's job easier. Right? We now know, for the most part, what Ngannou is going to look like inside the ring. It's true, Ngannou got some phenomenal experience in only his one pro fight, dude, and I expect him to come out and look a little better. But he's not going to all of a sudden completely reinvent himself. The dude's been fighting his whole life. He's been doing a lot of boxing even when he was in MMA. Now he actually fought a professional boxing match, had a professional training camp. He's not all of a sudden going to come out and dance around the ring and use a jab like Muhammad Ali or something like that, right? Like we know what the dude's pretty much going to do. We know what he's going to look like, and we can start to imagine how exactly is that going to match up against Anthony Joshua. And I'll tell you what, man, the Anthony Joshua that we just saw out there against Otto Wallin, the one that just recently fought, man, that Anthony Joshua was a handful, man. That dude is a beast, okay? Francis Ngannou wants to go to that southpaw stance. Otto Wallin was in a southpaw stance. All you got to do is look at that first round and start to see some of those crisp, hard counter right hands that Joshua was using. Anytime Otto Wallin was trying to come forward, when he was trying to build something, when he was trying to get that jab going, man, it was right in his face. When he was trying to move forward, he was beautifully, Anthony Joshua beautifully made, using his lead foot, his left foot, stepping outside of the lead foot of Wallin, which just create that perfect lane for him to come right down the pipe with that right hand. That's the kind of stuff Ngannou's going to be dealing with when he switches over to southpaw. Okay, and like I said, he wasn't really able to get his offense going out of southpaw, and he wasn't really able to get his any kind of crazy, super effective defense going. What he saw the most out of being in that southpaw stance when he fought Tyson Fury was his ability to nullify Tyson Fury's jab. If Anthony Joshua is not relying on the jab, and instead he's going with a hard, straight right hand, and that's how he's going to use that's what he's going to use as his primary weapon to attack a southpaw, Francis Ngannou is going to be in trouble with that one. I also think that a lot of Ngannou's game is built on being the aggressor, right? He's the guy that's got to come forward. He's the guy that wants to be on that front foot. He wants to apply the pressure. Not only does it make him being more comfortable having all that space behind him in the ring if he needs to move, not that he's the biggest mover, but it's there, but also the fact that it makes his opponent uncomfortable, because a lot of guys don't like fighting off the back foot. A lot of guys don't like fighting off of the ropes or anything like that. Is he going to be able to push Anthony Joshua back? That remains to be seen. Again, the Anthony Joshua that came out there and fought Otto Wallin, no, he ain't going to push dude back. Joshua's got better footwork. Joshua's got a better jab. Joshua will be able to come out there, I think, and control the distance, or establish the distance and control it a lot, just with the jab if he wants to. If Ngannou's in the southpaw stance, I think he'll be able to do it with the right hand. And once he's got those, he's a heavy puncher, man. Once he gets those punches going, once he gets the threat known of what's coming back to Ngannou, I don't think Ngannou's just going to, come forward and recklessly apply pressure. He's a smart fighter, man. He'll be a little bit more patient. He'll be a little bit more calculated in what he does. And I think that that's going to take a little bit off his game, right? Because if he's in there with a boxer like Joshua and he's not able to apply that constant pressure because of what Joshua's got coming back at him and because of the skill set that Joshua has, and then gives Joshua the chance to kind of establish the distance he wants, establish the pace that he wants, and start to fight the way he wants and be the general and dictate things, that's going to be a big downside for Francis Ngannou, man. So, I can't wait to see how these training camp looks. I can't wait for the fight. Again, it's going to be huge. We see Saudi Arabia rolling out, brand new belts for these guys and stuff. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be awesome. So, let me know what you guys think. Are you excited about this fight? Do you think Ngannou's going to be able to bring something big to the table? And who do you think is going to come out with the victory?